This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about Secret Invasion for the finale, Home.
Talos was weak, and we wandered in the shadows for 30 years because he was weak. He turned a war people into a band of beggars, and what I'm supposed to emulate that? I'm supposed to be like Talos and put my trust in you. You pimped us, Fury. You put us out to work for you, and when you were done with us, you threw us away. So, first, I'm gonna kill you. And then, I'm gonna take a flamethrower to humanity. And just so I am absolutely clear about this, Fury, you look at me. Look at me. You did this. All the bombs, and the blackouts, and the massacres, and the wildfires, and the imminent removal of humans from their habitat. That is all you.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. We are on the finale of Secret Invasion on TV Podcast Industries. We're here to talk spoiler-filled detail all about Secret Invasion. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out the trio to complete us as we complete this series, I am Chris.
Welcome back, everybody.
Woo-hoo.
Nice to have us all together for the final episode of the series.
Yes, I am in my sickly Skrull form.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
As you can probably tell from my immensely nasally sound.
You are looking very green.
Green around the gills.
Yeah.
Yes, blowing green into my handkerchief.
Oh.
You name it, I'm green, green, green.
It's not easy being green, John.
It's not.
Little green men.
But we are talking about little green men and ladies for this episode, of course, for Secret Invasion. This is our spoiler-filled discussion about the finale of the show. But if you are joining us for the first time for this episode, you can subscribe to the podcast by popping over to tvpodcastindustries.com. Subscribe over there. You'll get access to all of our shows, all the episodes that we've done on Secret Invasion and all the Marvel shows so far, and all the other shows that we're covering at the moment. Guys, can you tell this is the week after San Diego Comic-Con? We have a brand new episode of Invincible has been released this week.
Whoop, whoop.
The second part of The Witcher Season 3 came out today as we record. Good Omens Season 2 is coming out tomorrow as we record. All 6 episodes of that. All these things are all dropping this week after San Diego Comic-Con, where pretty much none of them could be promoted by their cast. It could only be promoted by some directors behind the scenes or some quick clips of episodes and stuff. So this was clearly all planned to land after San Diego Comic-Con. And we also got the excellent extra episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the crossover with Lower Decks, which was absolutely brilliant. All dropped this week.
But are you trying to make me feel better?
I'm not trying to make you feel better, John. I'm just...
all this news of new releases.
Yeah. Things to watch while you're putting your feet
Dying
up
on the
and
couch.
Yes. Yeah.
So, fellow witches, as well as fellow defenders, and fellow angels and demons, you may be hearing my croaky voice a little more over the next few podcasts.
Yes. But an exciting week, though.
Yes.
Yeah. God, it was a subdued San Diego Comic-Con, but definitely a good one for the comic fans. Back to its roots. Still felt weird, though. Just with so many things, as you call it, so many things being released, so many things out there. Mm-hmm. And just some of them went under the radar.
Yeah.
You actually text me about the Invincible Atom Eve hour-long episode that they stealth dropped, or Beyonce dropped for everyone after their panel.
Yeah.
And only that I had been on social media that early that morning. I was like, yep, got it, watched it. It was amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
But, like, there's no press.
That wasn't even
on
our schedule.
It wasn't even promoted in my Amazon Prime. I'm like, what the what?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. But cool to get those little reveals, and clearly they expected a much bigger bang from them.
Well, and for me, Strange New Worlds with the Lower Decks crossover was just chef's like French kiss, I think. Really. It was awesome.
It was kind of up there.
I loved it.
I'd say top 10 episodes of Star Trek of all time. Like, absolutely wonderful.
Okay, I will have to watch it then.
Yes, well worth a watch, Chris, if you have any interest in Star Trek.
Which you know I do.
Which I know you do, of course. Yes. We did cover Picard here on the podcast, of course. So we know you like your Star Trek, but go jump in, watch that episode. It's good fun. And yeah, looking forward to Good Omens this week. We've seen the first couple of episodes of Good Omens, and we can reveal that we've really enjoyed the first two. So looking forward to getting into that series as we get to cover that at TV Podcast Industries.
A return to some quirky British humour.
100%.
On top of yours.
Yes. And add our own. Exactly. Let's get into our discussion about the finale of Secret Invasion. Once again, executive producers for the show are Kevin Feige, Jonathan Schwartz, Louis D'Esposito, Brad Winterbaum, Samuel L. Jackson, Ali Salim, Kyle Bradstreet, and Brian Tucker, the head writer for the show. Of course, Kyle Bradstreet, as we've mentioned before, came from Mr. Robot. All episodes this season were directed by Ali Salim, and this episode was written by Kyle Bradstreet and Brian Tucker.
Excellent stuff.
Mm-hmm. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the finale of Secret Invasion Home?
Sure. Fury confronts Gravik at New Skrullos. He gives him the harvest and in exchange asks that he spare Earth and conquer any other planet. Gravik refuses before using the harvest vial to empower himself further with superpowers and attempt to kill Fury in the process. Only he learns that the Nick Fury he has met with is a disguised Gaia, ready to get revenge on him for the murder of her parents. She also has received the power of the Avengers from the Harvest, and the two fight using the various powers of many superpowered beings incorporated into their DNA. Gaia eventually succeeds in killing Gravik with a cosmic beam to his torso. Meanwhile, Rava, in the form of Colonel Rhodes, successfully convinces Ritson to authorize a nuclear strike on New Skrullos, but is tricked by Sonya Falsworth into arranging for Ritson's evacuation from the hospital and into a standoff with the real Nick Fury. Rava attempts to retaliate, but is killed by Fury. President Ritson calls off the strike, allowing Gaia to free Gravik's human prisoners, including many world leaders, Everett Ross, and the real Colonel Rhodes. But in the aftermath, Ritson gives a hateful speech against the Skrulls and issues a new bill declaring all off-world species as hostile forces. He threatens to hunt down the remaining Skrulls on Earth, causing unrest as civilians publicly murder various high-profile officials for fear that they are Skrulls. Meanwhile, Sonya Falsworth meets with Gaia and proposes a partnership to protect the Skrulls against Ritson's bill, while after cautioning President Ritson about the unrest he has caused, Fury asks Vara to come to Saber with him to help negotiate on behalf of the Skrulls at a peace summit with the Kree. She agrees and they leave Earth together.
I guess, yeah, off they go together into the Marvels, coming to cinemas in November of this year.
Yes.
But I thought the Marvels was before this.
We were speculating because we were thinking that if Nick Fury died in this series, it could take place before this. We don't really know. We know it takes place after Miss Marvel. We know it takes place after WandaVision. And we know Secret Invasion takes place after everything else that we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's
but we
true.
Didn't know whether the Marvels was going to be a flashback or forward.
And it might be dealing with Ritson's hateful sort of proclamation, really.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Hopefully we also get more Sonya Falsworth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, will she ultimately be the replacement for Nick Fury? Or at least the British angle, I
Maybe.
guess?
Excalibur, MI6.
I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get into our main case points. Let's drop into them. Go into our case point number 1. I think we got to start with Super Skrull versus Super Skrull rather than Spy versus Spy in this episode. As we have the confrontation sort of between Gravik and Nick Fury and Gravik and Gaia.
I know.
Yes.
You know what? There's one thing I really like about this. Gravik didn't get to make his big villainous speech as to why he did everything to his actual enemy. I kind of like that. It's kind of a little rug pull out from under all the power that was behind that amazing speech from Gravik, that actually he wasn't talking to the person that he thought he was.
That is true. That is true. And for this episode, it was my favourite part, actually. Gravik's delivery, like that frustration, all that emotion, was just coming out, pouring out. And in the end, realised, that it wasn't to the person who he thought it was.
Exactly.
And certainly given that, his second in command he killed last week, after being accused of sparing Fury, really, at various stages, and not finishing him off sooner. This, it's kind of almost like the evil Bond villain that needs to have the right moment at the right time to deliver his monologue. And in the end, it was to Gaia and not to Nick Fury, but I still loved everything around that. And I certainly guessing from Gaia taking Nick Fury's form that she must have got his memories and all of that, because she certainly knew the ins and outs of that, of their relationship, of things that he had asked Gravik to do, and so on. Plus, it was also because
I do think it's Gravik that goes into the detail, and I think I think Gaia's kind of facilitating the discussion. So she does know enough, and she's making an apology, which Nick Fury probably wouldn't make for everything that's happened. But she's not making huge statements. I was thinking about it and kind of going, maybe she's got, as we know, when they take the form, they can also take the memories. So she may have taken the memories here, but it's not like Nick is giving over loads of detail.
No, not loads, but enough to sort of confirm things. Yeah. But the reason why I said that as well is just because the earlier phone call by Nick Fury to Priscilla, you see the car that ultimately sort of trundles up to the front gates of the former nuclear facility.
Yeah.
And so I was then thinking, is that then Gaia's Nick Fury speaking with Priscilla, and why would that be? I wasn't entirely sure, but it's just, you see him walk down the passageway to get to, you see the silver car at the end, and it looks like it's the same profile as the one that ultimately comes to the gate of the nuclear facility. So I was just like, I wonder why that was, given the huge amount of double meaning in that conversation. Or maybe Priscilla was just meaning it in relation to Gaia, but then I was thinking, well, they basically fought off Skrulls in the last episode, so I just was a little, I just didn't know, to be honest.
Okay, well, I can clarify it, definitely. So that phone call is definitely Fury speaking to his wife, Priscilla. That's absolutely, they spent, at the end of the last episode, we saw that Fury was in Finland picking up the DNA of the Avengers, I guess, the harvest. He obviously had to meet up with Gaia to hand over that DNA. And then the approach to New Skrullos is the following day. It's during daytime. So he must have met up with her after making that phone call and handed over the car to her. Now, I will say this is definitely the writing and direction, trying to make the audience think that's Nick Fury walking in there. There's a couple of stupid things that they do that don't make sense in hindsight. Why is Gaia as Fury coughing at the radiation when she's going in to meet with Gravik, not when she meets with Gravik? The moments that she's in with him, you can understand that she's pretending to be Nick, but why is she doing it outside before he's anywhere close?
And I was wondering how quickly coughing like that would kick in with the radiation exposure. I guess it depends on how high it is.
I took the
I know
outside coughing as just play acting, so that doesn't, I don't hit the wall with that one.
Yeah, that one just seemed a bit early to be saying it. That was more for the audience to make you think it's Fury that's going in. For me,
but the point I'm making is that this is where maybe even if it was 40 minutes, so you saw that kind of handover, not necessarily revealing that Gaia was going to be the one in front of Gravik, because equally she could have been the one with Falsworth, okay, a bit more risk attached to that because of the president, but it was just one of those things. Because I saw the car, then I was like, it was more, it's not even the scenes, it's just the timeline of when that was happening. Just, it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
You assume because they then immediately went to the car trundling towards the gate, and that's the only reason I kind of noticed the silver car in the background.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, it could just be shorthand to keep the audience guessing.
It is,
but it's just like, okay, I don't know now whether that's Gaia or Fury. You're right. It should be the real Nick Fury, but at the time, it was just like, okay, this is not making any sense.
Yeah.
If it is Gaia.
Yeah, as I say, I think they're trying to make sure it doesn't make sense to you because you will then suspect it's Fury. But because of that change in time, it is nighttime when he's making the phone call and daytime when he's coming up to New Skrullos. But what I did find really interesting here, we talked about it last week, Chris, the fact that Gravik has gone completely over the edge in this episode. We actually discovered that from Gaia Fury walking around New Skrullos. Last episode, we saw Beto killed in front of some of the refugees that were in New Skrullos, and a couple of other people that took on Gravik. I think there was only like 5 or 6 people that took him on, but when you see Fury looking through the window to where that fight took place, there's definitely way more bodies than the number of people that took him on.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
you're like,
lots more.
Okay. And then he makes a comment to Fury Gaia, or Gaia Fury, whichever, what we're calling her, just Gaia, that when she asks where is everyone, he just says they're all locked up, but that just doesn't make sense when you saw how many people were in that place. Yeah. So he's definitely gone a bit genocidal.
Yes, he's gone totally over the edge. That kind of scene with him after he kills Beto was him calling out who's next. So potentially either there was another uprising or he just doesn't trust anybody else around him, and he took them all out. So I thought that was quite interesting. And then we have the confrontation itself in the machine between Fury Gaia and Gravik. So I did really like this. I loved getting that moment of Gravik explaining, what it took to push him over the edge. We kind of asked that question earlier on in the series. Why is it that at this point Gravik has decided that he will turn against Talos, will turn against Fury, and will lead this other sect against everything that he knows? And he explains it really clearly here. Everything about them not keeping up the promise and leaving them behind in the snap and then never coming back for them. And he feels personally hurt by that because of how much he did on his missions, killing people at the request of Fury. Yeah. So I thought that was a really good scene to see all that pain rise. God, again, Kingsley Ben-Adir is such a great actor. Oh,
and especially that part where he talks about his face. Do you not remember where this face came from? Yeah. So I have some absolute beautiful things to say about this scene, and I have some very not so beautiful. The beautiful thing is Kingsley. He eats this scene up. Yeah. And just really, you see the raw emotion, and you do now see why they, like, we've seen before, like, as an actor, why he's been placed this, but really here, he's shone through.
Absolutely.
And I'm just like, you can own this forever, this role, per se, because we would love to see you more and more and more and more. I had talked about this as a Skrull versus Skrull fight.
Absolutely.
And we had called it, and I kind of, I don't know whether it's because I kind of guessed it or I called it, or just that fact that we got a bit of a CGI slugfest, whereas this was a Nick Fury show. So Nick Fury uses his smarts. Technically, this is him using his smarts. He can't outpunch a super Skrull, so he brought in someone who can. I track that logic.
Who again had her own personal reason for taking out Gravik. It's actually, she's had more taken away from her than Fury has. She's lost her father and mother to him.
But I think this is where I would really like to know for definite, and I'm sure it is, that Gaia is giving Fury's thoughts here, because I love the stuff between Fury and Priscilla, because it's Fury's heart on his sleeve. And I felt that, Gravik here, the performance, amazing, loved it. And it's absolutely the reason why he's doing what he's doing. And, is that moment where effectively Fury is saying it's easier to save 8 billion people than to change their hearts and minds, that, there is an alien species. Is that Fury? Because I think, like, one of the things here, given the notion that Fury effectively pimped out an alien species, is why didn't it happen? And it would have been nice, even though I do quite like the rug pulling, and I think it's makes perfect logical sense as to why Gaia is there.
Yeah.
It just feels that these two titans should have had some kind of cathartic moment. And that's why I'm taking it that Gaia has all his memories, so she could, that stuff meant something. She wasn't just being and playing Nick Fury. As you say, maybe where he says, I failed you, and your people, that is possibly not what Nick Fury would say, but it does feel like I wanted to hear Fury's account.
Yeah, but it is an echo of what he said to Talos in episode 2. Yeah. He specifically said to him, there's no way this planet could accept another species here.
I know. I just thought it was important.
And he knows that it is an echo of what he said back there. So I do think she's taking his thoughts there. But again, they're kind of having their cake and eating it here. They're having the confrontation between the two. It isn't Nick Fury, but it is Nick Fury's thoughts at that point. But I don't believe the Nick Fury that we've seen in the MCU would have told Gravik, here you go, here's all the Avengers DNA. As long as you leave Earth and go off and murder some other species, I'm grand with that. That doesn't feel like a Nick Fury thing to do. He's goading him into using the DNA so that they can have the Super Skrull battle effectively.
Yeah.
They're, as I say, they are having their cake and eating it. They're doing both things. They're telling you what Nick Fury would say and also doing it for a purpose, which is have that Skrull versus Skrull battle. Because really the other enemy for Nick Fury is Rhodey. So it is a more one-on-one battle, Fury versus Rhodey to save the president of the USA. That's more of a one-on-one battle that he can win. So while we had talked about it before saying this is a Nick Fury series, this is actually an origin story for Gaia the Super Skrull.
Yes.
This whole series started with her, ended with her. The character has been seen in the MCU back to Captain Marvel as well. So this is her origin story in the shadow of Nick Fury almost.
Yeah.
So both of them have to get their moment at the end of the season. They both go up against their opposing force, effectively.
Yeah. No, look, and don't get me wrong. I as a foil battle, kind of the two immovable titans, it works.
I loved this battle, I must say. The CGI was so good. See, purely because you're able to watch it and pick out which powers they're picking up, I suppose.
Well, that's what I like.
That was so much fun to be able to do that. And that's, it's a TV budget, of course. So, you're going to have to accept that it may not always work cohesively together. There's, 7 or 8 different heroes and villains that are included in the transformation. So they may not be cohesive when you have, Abomination's arm and Drax's arm on either side of a Skrull body. But I think it works well enough that you're able to go, ooh, I know that character. Ooh, I know which power they're pulling from there.
No, absolutely.
There was some real surprises in there, though, as well. Having the invisibility power of Ghost was really surprising. Having the ice arm of the Frost Giants was really surprising in there. Having Abomination, since he wasn't at the Battle of Earth, was a real surprise there. But he is a registered felon, so potentially they got some of his DNA and stuck it into the jar of DNA.
Well, that's it, yeah. There was Black Panther as well, which I thought was interesting, that came up on the screen.
Black Panther was listed, yes, absolutely.
One that got me was the sorcerer, the Thanos' sorcerer.
Ebony Maw.
Yeah, Ebony Maw.
His telekinesis, which I thought was magic, his ability to move things, less telekinesis, but I assume now he just is somewhat telekinetic because he moved something with his mind, and I thought it looked very much like back then we all thought it was just magic, a magic user versus a magic user.
I'll have to repeat the MCU phrase to you, Chris. Magic is just science we don't understand.
True, very true.
So it could be part of his DNA. So yeah, remember there was that conversation in Spider-Man with Doctor Strange talking to Ned, saying to him that he seems to have a bit of magic inside him. So some people are more sensitive to it than others.
That's true.
They could be DNA related. We don't know. It's not explained here. It's certainly how you would know that it's Ebony Maw rather than just some weird grey arm that she's attaching to herself. But they certainly had a lot of fun with the powers there.
Definitely. Yes. And it was fun watching it because it even just to go back, because as soon as the invisibility came up, I was like going, well, the only one I know is Ghost. But then I was thinking of the Fantastic Four suddenly. Is there some kind of like little hint there? But looking back, when Gravik puts the vial into the machine to verify its purity, you see Ghost come up and you see the Frost Beast, and it's even, I was just thinking of Mr. Freeze as well.
Yeah, exactly.
With the ice.
Iceman, yeah. Iceman, because I think Mr. Freeze might be a lollipop that we had as a kid. Or maybe that's DC. Yeah.
Iceman.
Iceman, yes. But you even see that little glitch in her after she does the invisibility, like we saw in the Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah.
This does officially make Gaia the most powerful character in the MCU now.
100%.
Yeah.
At the end of this, she is now officially like OP. She could take on Captain Marvel herself.
She could, but Captain Marvel could also kill her, as she killed an equivalent beast with effectively the cosmic beam through the torso. Yeah. Because I was there going, to what extent does Extremis heal things?
Yeah. Not that.
Obviously not that. Certainly, I guess.
Let's wait and see. We could get Gravik comes back. It just takes 6 months to heal him up.
So she's not indestructible. She is hugely powerful, absolutely. Yeah. But the fact that she killed Gravik with one of those abilities rather than all of them by our powers combined type effect.
Captain Planet effect.
Yeah, exactly. Then she's not indestructible.
Absolutely.
Because, otherwise they've just created
God.
Yeah, effectively.
And certainly includes Thor Odinson, so they have created someone with God DNA.
That is true.
So we did
Thor.
see Thor listed in there, so she has the power. In fact, I think that is the first move that she does. She blocks, Fury blocks Gravik's first punch without transforming his arm into anything. So that has to be Thor, right? Yeah. And then it transforms into the Hulk arm and punches him out of the building. So kind of cool. It was a cool little scene. Anything else about this fight, though?
I was surprised that we didn't have any Korg quips, given that Korg was in there. We just saw kind of a rock arm, but I just thought some dreadful Korg sense of humour may have come up.
Quite nice, isn't it, seeing Korg without that, without having to have a quip attached to it?
Yes.
No, but it should be in his DNA.
I'd say it is. Maybe if she turned her head into his mouth, all we would hear is just the quips.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And of course, there was saw Valkyrie listed on the list of DNA as well. Not that I saw any of her powers, but I guess just general combat would be Valkyrie's one.
Yeah, absolutely. We will return to the Asgardians a little later on in this discussion. I have a question about them. But is there anything else on this opening fight, before we move on to our second case note?
Nothing from me. I think I'll talk more about it as I kind of wrap up.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. I think it worked perfect for me as a battle and a fight down between Gaia and Gravik. But a bit of a shame of that weirdness on the entry where they're trying to make us think that it's Nick Fury. But other than that, I thought it was great. A great battle between the two. Our case note number 2 is, well, I guess it has to be Rhodey, right? It has to be the row with Rhodey. So this really kicks off when we see Rhodey trying to push the president of the United States to drop a bomb in Russia. And we have the admiral from the US Navy.
A rear admiral.
Yes, a rear admiral, making the absolutely correct case to Rhodey here. Hang on a second. Let's not drop a bomb on a country with nuclear capability without having a little moment to just check ourselves and see if this is a false flag attack. How does Rhodey have this much power with the president? The president seems very quiet. I know he's just had a massive attack that almost killed him, but he seems very quiet and not pushing back. And Rhodey seems to be the one that's beating down everybody around him, which he really shouldn't have that level of power with the president. That's not really how the presidential structure works, as far as I'm aware.
I don't think so. But I'm guessing he's just pushing that envelope because ultimately it's Scrody, and that is the plan here, is to take out, start this war. That's the bigger objective. So I think Scrody here is just sort of pushing the envelope to do that. Now, having said that, you're right.
Yeah.
Should have been sort of brought up. But I think that's ultimately the main motivation here. He's just pushing that because his goal is something different.
Yeah, but there's also a bit of his rationale that didn't make any sense to me. He says, I've got 30 dead Russians down the road from the attack that prove that it's the Russians on their side. As far as I know, that attack was all Skrulls. Yeah. So anybody killed in that attack has now turned back into a Skrull, right? That's what my understanding. I don't think they were actually working with human Russians, were they?
I don't. That's the big unknown here.
So if they just drove down the road, they'd just see loads of bodies of Skrulls on the ground. Yeah. But maybe they were.
But you had Gravik prepping the team to say, speak in Russian.
Yeah.
Because, it needs to look authentic, go all out. I don't know whether you would be saying that to Russians. Yeah. And, I mean, it's even to the point of them being killed. At the time, my feeling was, if Gravik's got the extremists and is able to heal, why has he not got his whole team there? Because then they wouldn't die from a gunshot wound.
We did talk about that that's part of Gravik going over the edge. He's made himself more powerful and said that he's going to hand it on to his lieutenants, but never does. So I think that's
ultimately, you're right. It would be a field littered with Skrulls because they've transformed on death. So again, it's just another one of those things that is kind of left up in the air a bit here, I think.
Well, maybe there was some mercenaries. There's definitely a few plot holes. Let's just think. Yeah. Nothing glaring. It's just, there is this, the president shouldn't just be listening to Rhodey, who's just an advisor.
Yeah.
He's not his chief of staff. He's not Vice President Rhodey, or anything crazy like that. It's just, I took it as the president's still a bit concussed.
Yeah.
From
it's just that Richardson doesn't say much as well.
Yes.
And he does. It's not like he's actually going to press the button. We don't ever actually hear him say he's going to drop the bomb. It just seems to be all coming from Rhodey. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. Like,
yeah.
Anybody see the little nod to how long ago this episode was written as well?
No, I missed that one.
Yeah, just the idea that all Rhodey has to do is put up on screen that the Russians have deployed troops on the borders of Finland and the Ukraine, yes. And that would get the American president to go into a war against Russia. Mate, that happened a year and a half ago, and I don't see American troops running in to drop bombs in Russia yet. So, that's clearly written in a utopian world where that would happen. That didn't happen.
Even just the fact that they cast it to a civilian TV like that, high level security information. It's just like, wow, okay, there's no setup. Connect device.
Can you connect to the device? What's the passcode? Okay, let's pair these things. Come on. Yeah. No, it's uppercase A.
Exactly. I was just like, okay, fair enough. Just show him the tablet,
Yeah.
But I feel like in trying to hide stuff or whatever, or to, cover up who it was that Gravik is speaking to at the end or whatever, there's just bits where maybe that shouldn't have been the big reveal. That should have just happened, and that there's other stuff that could have been sort of kept stum or in the dark because it's a bit more spy worthy, and it's just in these little things. Like, I mean, it's stupid for me to quibble over them throwing top secret military information onto a hospital plasma screen TV, but it's just like, why? Why do that?
Because you can.
Well, it looks cool, I guess.
Exactly.
But we all know the practicalities around setting up your digital infrastructure.
Maybe in the Marvel universe in 2025, maybe it's Star Trek. Yeah, exactly. It could be Star Trek. Or something like that. Yeah. They are slightly more technologically advanced than we are, even though they had a 5-year gap where half of all the planet had disappeared. But maybe that let them focus on things like that. We don't know. But the whole point is here, Rhodey is pushing his luck with the president and pushing him to drop bombs on Russia for their collaboration with the Skrulls. But then we have probably another of my favorite moments in the episode. Sonya Falsworth using her abilities to get Rhodey to move the president from a different room, and all of her and her team taking out all of Rhodey's team. I thought this was so good. Really enjoyed watching this scene.
Does she have a team, or is it just her and Fury.
It's potentially just her and Fury. We don't see. You're absolutely right. They do take out a lot of people, though. So that's why I was assuming there was at least one more person on Sonya's team. But
so was I.
But it could have been just Fury and Sonya, which is pretty cool in itself.
Definitely, Sonya was great in this, but more about getting Rhodey at gunpoint as well. As Rhodey's checking into certain rooms in the hospital, and she says, "No checking behind the doors. You really are a Skrull." As she just pops out of the room that he's just looked in. I just really enjoy the delivery and the sense of fun that she's having with this role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Olivia Colman's so good. I love when he tries to protest and goes, she goes, "No buts here, just yours in the hole." Very good. Very good. And then we have our final confrontation, really, finally taking out Rhodey as he is trying to push the president, and Fury's trying to explain to the president that you have been duped by a Skrull for this whole time. So, really like the scene, really like the confrontation. Don't know why Sonya just didn't shoot.
Thank you, in the leg, like she did with the other guy.
But I know Ritson did have his gun pointed at her most of the time when she came out of that room onwards. So possible she played the odds and thought, "Hang on a second, I don't want to just get a bullet in the head for pulling my trigger effectively." So so I kind of get. That's possibly a reason why, but we have seen her do that in the past pretty quickly. So, it's probably just the slightly shaky president with a gun in his hand pointing at her head, thinking that she's got his chief advisor.
And ultimately that's what it looks like. Yeah. So it makes sense that she wouldn't shoot him, I think. I think it is effectively like they get to, it's like, well, what do you have to lose? Just stand down everything for the time being. Exactly. And then it's that suggestion forces Rhodey to take the gun from Sonya in order to kill Fury.
Yeah.
Although, again, I thought Sonya actually had 2 guns. So even though he got one, I wondered where the other had got to.
Oh, right.
So if I was Sonya going forward, I will carry a cigar chopper. You know, the little thing that chops the top off a cigar. And literally just take a snip off the finger of the Skrull and just go, "Look, there, see? It turned green."
Yeah.
There you go.
That's the way to do
it. Now
it.
we know who it is. And just like, that's her thing. That's her weapon now.
Yeah.
I look, this was cool. The, Fury screaming, everyone screaming. The back and forth was quite tense. It was well written.
I liked that too.
And when we knew Fury was there and we knew where Gaia was, I was like, oh. Because that does mean potentially that Maria Hill is dead. Because I had speculated that she was going to help with this. And when we saw Gaia, when you said team, I was like that too. I was like, oh, maybe there was more. Everyone was speculating that Chloe was from Quake, from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to be brought in on this, and this was where she was returning. It was a big rumor, who cares? Yeah. But I was expecting, oh cool, we're going to get Sonya, and then you see Maria Hill, and then you saw Fury, and everyone just kind of triangled up on him, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
But no, this looks like it was just Sonya. From what it looks like, it's just Sonya. Maybe her British MI6 team.
That's what I was thinking. It might have been a few of her MI6 team. She does have a few of them around. We don't ever get to meet any of them, but we do. She does have a few of them around. She is now the director of MI6 as well, so she would have the ability to control a group of guys, basically. So
because if you did that, then you could have done. Here's a guy. Oh, they just introduced someone called Brian Braddock. Oh, there's Captain Britain. Nope. So anyway, look, if I was, unfortunately, my hype levels brought this up because I thought we were going to get the return of characters, or at least a character, Maria Hill. And I was kind of like, they did kill Scrody. It was fine. So, and they saved the president. But some of our main characters are still dead.
Yes.
So
yes, so we did say we didn't want everybody back, but yeah, we had lots of speculation about who he was calling last week, and we did call it. Yeah, he was definitely calling Gaia. That was the phone call.
Yep.
He was making the handover to her, giving a call to Priscilla, and then going off to the UK while she went off to Russia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But overall, this does kind of close that, and I thought it was closing it in an overall really good way, in that I thought this was setting up the future Talos wanted, which is like, hey, yeah, we know Skrulls are here, but some of them are good.
Yeah.
And
it's really not.
Boy, it does not. Like,
yeah,
it's really
who
not.
knew?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you try and assassinate an American president, that they may go scorched earth on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, quite a big reveal of his plan of what he wants to happen, and effectively probably setting up a Skrull kill crew. I guess a crew that will go out and take out all of the Skrulls remaining on Earth. Some interesting things in his wording, though, because he didn't say any Skrulls living on Earth. He said anybody living on Earth who is not born on Earth. So, as I mentioned earlier on, what does that mean for the Asgardians who have a place on Earth where all of New Asgard, where they're all living now? Are they now going to be hunted down and killed by President Ritson's kill crew?
Yeah, and Korg and Squee.
Well, I was including them. They do live in New
Asgard.
in New Asgard. Like, it's effectively a spacefaring group who are now living on Earth, and anybody else who may come to visit, are they just going to be run off and killed? It seems quite big. I was going to talk about this in kind of our final point in the aftermath, but we'll keep talking about it here. It does lead into a pretty brutal final moments of that part of the episode of this story, effectively. I don't know whether you guys are desensitized by some of the other shows that we talk about, but I think this MCU show is, we said at the start, it's aimed more for adults, but it's definitely more brutal than most of the things that we've seen in other shows. I remember people freaking out about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where we saw off screen the potential new Captain America decapitating somebody because we saw a little bit of blood on the shield. In this episode, we get, 2 headshots?
Yeah.
Plus we get the murder of lots of innocent humans who had been replaced by Skrulls under the potential that they might possibly still be Skrulls. Yep. We get a few Skrulls murdered on air on television, including the American presenter on their version of Fox News who gets murdered on air. Yeah. So lots of brutality coming in at the end as humans find out they're not alone and potentially anybody could be a Skrull. So I thought that was a pretty violent way to end it.
I was going to say smacked of The Boys, but this felt very much like The Boys, which, like you said, are we desensitized? Yes, kind of, just based on, we've covered The Boys, and they have headshots and exploding heads all over the place in season 1 and 2. But for an MCU property, this sets up and is quite violent and provides the opportunity. We've heard from KEVIN that they are setting up, like, they are willing to do a mature MCU. They are willing to do an 18s kind of shows. So for me, this was like, I think, the dipping the toe, which is like, this whole season, this whole show is a bit more of a spy thriller. It's a bit more mature. It has more mature themes. And this ending is way more mature. And it's dark because it is essentially saying that, the human race is seriously xenophobic. And they said they are basically going for kill crews in the UK, in India, in America, and random people, and not actual US soldiers or soldiers go in and assassinate people. They assassinate one of the prime minister. No,
it's the British.
They assassinate the British prime minister.
Yeah. Someone just walks out of the crowd and walks up and shoots her in the head, and it turns out that she's not a Skrull. She's already been. It looks like she's probably making her speech saying, "I'm back," effectively. So,
I mean, I think that's it. It's the hopelessness of that ending, which is kind of, it's something different, because in effect, they've averted the catastrophe of all-out nuclear sort of war between Russia and America. Yet what's happened is the politics of it, and it's, I think, to what Nick Fury is saying to Ritson about, if I've ever seen a one-termism presidential move, it's this. It's almost like, I mean, he says that, but it feels like he's doing it for that populism, to unleash this kind of, them and us situation so that I'm the only one that can stand and protect the human race. And that's the thing. It just takes it into that dark place again. Whatever about the actual then shooting of it, but the politics of it and the wider implications for the MCU then moving forward.
Yeah. And underlining that Nick Fury's right. Exactly what Nick Fury had said. If I reveal to the world that Skrulls live here, they can't live with you, so they will try to kill you. So that is echoing what he said to Talos in episode 2, and as we said, what Gaia says to Gravik in this episode as well. So underlining what the true meaning behind it.
I do hope that some of this is addressed in the Marvels. And specifically just on the Skrulls, and I'm not talking it's just, we do see Captain Marvel on other planets still out in the universe, in her ship, in the trailers for the Marvels, and we hear Nick Fury talking to her, so I'm hoping some of this is just discussed, or because, do we want to move into our case note number 3? To kind of discuss the overall aftermath. So Fury is back up on Saber. He is just living up in space again. Now, yes, he will discuss how happy he is up there and why he's up there in a second. But essentially, I hope this is addressed, because essentially you're leaving potential assassination squads running around all of Earth during the Marvels, assuming the Marvels is set a couple of weeks after this, a month after this. I'm gonna go out on a very short limb here and say this is not going to be addressed in the Marvels, just because I think this show, if you're a parent that sits down with your 8 to 15-year-old kid and watches Secret Invasion, more power to you, but I think this show is not going to be the same target audience as the Marvels, so they won't have expected a lot of kids who watched Miss Marvel to have also watched Secret Invasion and then watch the Marvels. I don't think they're going to expect you to have that knowledge going into the movie in a couple of months' time, because it does feel much more like an adult show. Yeah. And really all it will explain is why Nick Fury is there and who his wife is for the Marvels. I think the other ending to the show, where we have Gaia being recruited by Sonya to defend the Skrulls who are still living on Earth, that's the continuation of the show. If there was to be a second season for this show, that's the route it would go down, where Sonya and Gaia are working together to protect the Earth from the people that Ritson has emboldened to go out and kill Skrulls.
Yeah. I mean, it might be that, they do link it up, but it's along the lines of these peace talks with the Kree. It could be along the lines of trying to resolve, in order to resolve the persecution that Ritson has kind of rained down on Skrulls in particular, with his speech. So it could link in that way.
Yeah, that's true.
But certainly, seeing a massive underground warehouse filled with more humans under the mind control technology of the Skrulls, I hope it comes out sooner rather than later, because, otherwise you get to me, the feeling like with the Eternals, where, you've left it with a massive celestial sticking out the ocean and it's never addressed again. And I mean, I've always said everything shouldn't be connected and they should be able to do one-offs, but I mean, it's kind of the MO for the MCU. And so it's like, and also just the feeling of Sonya and Gaia working together just is so juicy in terms of their partnership and how that was portrayed. It's like, you'll use me, I'll use you, and hopefully we can make this world a better place, to protect your people and mine. It's kind of like, not to fall into the same mistakes that happened with Fury and Talos. It's that this is a transactional relationship. It's not a friendship. And it's like that, and then seeing this huge sort of rows and rows and rows of, humans and the conversation of this is how they got so good. If that's going to be left, then all you can say is like, well, what's the point of that scene? So, and maybe it is more appropriate for a season 2. But then it's whether Secret Invasion gets a season 2.
Or it's the Secreter invasion.
Yeah.
Even more secret invasion.
There was definitely an intention at the beginning of the season. They had talked about that they did want to set the show up to have a season 2, to have the potential for a follow-up season. I feel like you probably would still have to go down a more adult path. Yes. And this wouldn't fit into a movie. The way that they take out the Skrulls is basically bullet to the head, right? So you're probably not going to see that in many of the standard MCU movies in the cinema. So I do think it was setting up a second season. I'm not too sure it's going to get one at this stage, given some of the feedback that I've already gone through for this episode from our fellow defenders, who are generally quite positive on Marvel shows. And that's a positive group. So, and some of the feedback that I'm getting from my co-hosts here, who are generally quite positive on Marvel shows.
So yes, and look, for me, it's just, I think they potentially can address it just very lightly, i.e., hey, Carol, I need you to really step up your game. Looking for the planets. We have a peace talks coming on, but now everyone's found out about the Skrulls, some Skrulls being on Earth. Can you come back? We need to talk about this now. And on her way back, the quantum entanglement happens. Like that is all it needs, just to kind of go to at least acknowledge, because John is right. The one thing we make a joke about is still on Earth in the MCU, there is a giant hand sticking out of the ocean. And it just has never been addressed since.
Yeah. What was the one? There was one reference to it in a newspaper article, wasn't there?
I think there was.
It was like maybe She-Hulk or something like that. But it's nobody's ever visited it, because we haven't had another movie set on Earth since then. Obviously, COVID stuff and all of that stuff. There was obviously some intention that we would see that pretty quickly after the Eternals, but it's not been mentioned since, and not been shown since on screen. Yeah.
And I think, look, not everything has to be connected, but when you have earth-shaping events, call it that, like that's what this is, and the handout of the Earth is. That needs to get referenced later. It's like the blip. The blip has been referenced all the time because that is a global, universal, event.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's the choice, if it's stuff that happens in the Avengers effectively gets referenced to death, and then they move on to the next thing, that big thing that happened in the Avengers. Because for the first 6 years of the MCU, it was the Battle of New York. Yeah. And now it's the blip and the snap and the Battle of Earth, right? Those are the things that are getting referenced everywhere. It's probably, again, because so many things are being written at the same time, you can't really judge what you'll put in here, and could be changed by the next TV show and episode. There's so much content of these shows and movies coming out all at different times that it probably is quite difficult to get that balance right and know that you're writing a good story and not being affected by the next thing that comes along. So you take the big things like people disappearing from the planet for 5 years and coming back. Yeah. You take those big things as your jumping off point, and then try not to step on too many other people's toes if you're doing this massive world, I suppose. Yeah. It's a difficult thing to balance, I'm sure.
No, it is. Yeah. And so even if, speaking of, again, the Skrulls on Earth, everyone knowing, that does lead us to two major characters of the MCU who now have been confirmed to be taken by Skrulls and have chunks of missing time. So, yes, this is Rhodey is gone, and based on the internet sleuths and the hospital gown he's wearing when he comes out of the pod, people are assuming he has been gone since he went into hospital for the MRI machine in Civil War. That is the prevailing theory, unless he went in for a colonoscopy some point in the last year or 2 years, getting a checkup after the blip, and then he was taken. Yeah. Maybe they could do it that way. And that does set up the Armor Wars movie coming up in 2025, and we've already discussed that. Essentially, this is a good thing for Rhodey, because he's now, if it is Civil War, he didn't take part in Endgame, didn't take part in any of this stuff, and he doesn't even know Tony's dead.
Yeah.
So he's essentially waking up in a world where everything's changed, his best friend's gone, and he needs to then try and go and basically save all of Tony's stuff from this evil Skrull who was doing stuff, which is fantastic.
And he was in there the whole time during the snap and blip, right? He never even saw that happened to the world if it took place during Civil War. So quite a big thing. And they make a really big point of saying it's been a long time. It's Martin Freeman's Everett Ross that says that to him as well. You've been gone a long time, right? Yeah. How long have you been gone? Don't confirm it here exactly. But yeah, you're right that it does seem likely that he was taken at some point during his recovery after his back was broken in Civil War. So
yeah. And then Everett Ross. We don't know how long he's been gone. Does he know the fate of Wakanda? Does he know the fate of T'Challa? Does he know the fate of these things?
Yeah. Or was he grabbed from that van at the end of Wakanda Forever? Was that somebody impersonating Okoye that took him out of the van?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
captured him. You know, could be that.
So we have so much. It does set up some very interesting questions, as did the comic book that this is based on. That's what this did, and what I was hoping for was one or two more. I was scanning the background for all these characters. People walking out going, oh, maybe we get a glimpse of... I was going to joke and say Wong, but no. Someone of that ilk. A Ned, a Wong, a Betty Ross, a Maria Hill. Like, again, no, not Maria Hill because we saw her die, but you do understand where I'm coming. Coulson.
Wouldn't have been awesome though if someone like Madison, with a Y but not where you think, from She-Hulk, if she was in there as well, like something like that would have been just a fun little nod that wouldn't have affected the universe, but would have been just quite funny to have. I love your idea of Wong though. That would have been cool since he appeared in 90% of the output from Marvel for a whole year. Yeah. And it turns out that maybe the reason why he was appearing in so much was because he was a Skrull, or a Skrull had taken his place for a while. That would have been really interesting to do. But you're right. Everybody that was in the pods that we saw being taken out, of course, because there was quite a lot of people that exited that building, but the ones we saw being taken out were all people from the show. We even saw, Pagon, who was the right-hand man of Gravik. We saw him in his army uniform coming out of the building. So we know he's back alive and in the universe as well. Good Irish actor. We'll see him again, hopefully, in the future. Yeah. But that is one of the things about this episode. I do like it wrapped that up. We had talked about that at the beginning of the season, that hopefully when we see people die or people that are replaced by Skrulls, there will be a point at the end of the season where we see them coming back. That's something that is referenced in comics that have Skrulls, that they do keep the body, so to be released later. So I like that it wrapped it up that way. But it didn't seem to want to set anything up with that for the future, other than the moment we already talked about with Sonya and that room full of thousands of humans who have clearly been replaced by Skrulls on Earth, but not any specific face that I could see there that was somebody that we already know in the MCU.
No, I couldn't see any either. I think the other side of this aftermath is between Nick Fury and Priscilla as well.
Exactly.
Because running through this, just from the start with Nick Fury's call to Priscilla, is that continuation of, her wanting to feel beloved in this world. And, it starts off with, well, I probably won't be coming back, to him coming back to their home to ask for one last chance. Sort of that question that she asked, would you have accepted me in my true form? And he says, we'll never know. But then realizing that, I'm leaving tonight, will he come with me? And Priscilla, the relationship here is like, I know who I am when you're not here, but it's when you return that I begin to wonder.
Yes. Love that line.
And it also, it culminates with her coming to the pickup zone for Saber. And we do get an interspecies, kiss
We do.
from him. You know, he is willing to accept her. And I think, you know, of all the things that
Showing that
make
he's
Carrie,
loved her forever, not just
Exactly.
because of the face she wore.
And in some respects, this secret invasion is, dare I say it, the secret invasion of love into Nick Fury's heart.
Yes.
As much as anything, because it's like, I can see, because she's gone up to Saber, we know that Saber's going to, or at least the space station is going to be involved with the Marvels, that we will see at least Vara there.
I hope so.
In her true form. And I really hope so. I mean, that's the thing. If she's not, it's like, okay, well then, you know, unless it's in a different time period, like you've mentioned, then, okay, it's a little odd.
Yeah. But also movies don't necessarily have the time that would allow them to spend time on someone's relationship like a TV show does. That's what the benefit of having 6-episode TV shows are, that you can look at that. So it could literally be, and this is my wife Vara, and that's all we get on screen.
It could.
It would be great if it was. At least, it'd be great if we got at least to that. But I'm not too sure when it gets to the editing room whether they snip that stuff out and go, oh, well, it's not the same audience. People will wonder what that is, and we don't want to send kids to watch a show where people get shot in the head every episode.
but it ultimately comes down to how impactful Secret Invasion will be on the wider MCU as to how they're involving it. Because with Ms. Marvel, you've got
the whole family,
the whole three of them. So from WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, through to obviously Carol Danvers and her movies, they're all coming together here.
And you have the entire family from the Miss Marvel TV show who are going to be in the movie. We've seen them in the trailer. So, but that, again, it's just going back to what Kevin Feige said about not wanting to send people over to watch Daredevil. That's why it's not really tied in, even though we have had Daredevil and Kingpin back in the MCU. He doesn't want to send kids to go and watch the 18s show that was made on Netflix, because it's not made for them. It's not made for that audience. And I think Secret Invasion is the same. You don't want to send a 10-year-old to go and watch Secret Invasion. So I don't think it's going to be massively detailed. I think there'll be reference to Vara being there and the wife of Nick Fury, but I don't think it's going to be essential viewing for the kids that'll be in that audience watching the Marvels in November.
No, definitely, but it just mean it's the interweaving through of different elements to whatever they're aiming for more widely. Mm-hmm. But I, as I said at the start, I really enjoyed the Nick Fury, Priscilla, Vara side of this. The other interesting thing as well is because, you know, she does say to Nick Fury, my work's here, when he comes to say about one last chance. And it was only on the second time of viewing this that I saw that when she took her true form in front of the pod to take them up to Saber, it looked like she had pink ears. Or one of her ears was pink and not green.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, is that what she's kind of on about here? Some kind of manipulation within the DNA as well.
Interesting.
It just looked pink.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I'm just...
Oh, no, I saw the pink ears. Yeah, I just didn't connect the two pieces of the conversation there, that she's saying she'll only go up for the beginning to set up this consultation with the Kree, but she's not staying there. That's not her job. Her work is here on Earth. So, interesting.
So, I mean, ultimately, though, I do feel... Because I have enjoyed this series. I think it's been different. But it's like, I really hope they do get a season 2, because I do think there's elements here that they can take through.
Absolutely.
And is worth exploring. So, yeah, it would just be really interesting.
And as we've covered so many TV shows over the 9 years that we've been podcasting, season 2 almost invariably is better than season 1, because they learn from the things they've done and develop characters more in the second season.
Yeah.
So, but there have been some great things this season. Any other notes about this episode before we move on?
Yeah, quick one. Gaia got her superhero landing.
Yes, she
is
did.
now officially a superhero. There you go. She did her Marvel landing. We still do not know what happened to her mother. She
yes,
does
it was just mentioned off screen, yeah.
Yeah, she still just says that
true.
Gravik killed her. Gravik he acknowledges, but I was expecting kind of a drop there. It was like, yes, I snapped her neck myself, kind of blah, 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 blah. He was already in the villain rant.
Yeah. Or she just didn't follow orders or something, whatever it was. Yeah, because it was even a line from Talos at the beginning of the season, wasn't it? Confront him, ask him the question. Yeah. He's the one that killed her. You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, it was odd to not have that threat season. Yeah.
And apart from three of the members, like, I did feel that the council wasn't really resolved very well. I mean, because yes, it was the British Prime Minister that was shot and it ended off being the human version of her. But does that mean that the Skrull version of her got captured, or did she just change form into someone else in order to sort of make her escape and is still out there, you know, and to the whole loads of humans that are in stasis there, you know, that to carry on Gravik's work. Exactly. You know, you had the head of NATO. We saw the news anchor being shot, and that was a Skrull, so he's off the table, and the council member that left and wouldn't accept Gravik's rule, fighting off these vigilantes.
Yeah.
Again, it's like because that was at her home, you know, who was she? Was she, I didn't quite understand what public figure she was. So was it just like that vigilantism? Was it simply they're actually going from house to house to see?
Right. No, I think she was quite powerful. I can't remember what her role was, but she was quite powerful.
I thought she was something in the Indian government. I took that as, I think it was mentioned. It's not prime minister, but it was maybe minister. It was alluded to.
It's just kind of why her though. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so I just felt like something around the council, just like having to disband or go into hiding. Some idea of, well, because there's still a rake of Skrulls that are in human form.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, they were the command structure. There was, you know, all that connection with Talos and his ousting as well. Yeah. So,
we've mentioned that at last episode, as the show has been narrowing down to a Gravik leader versus his lieutenants. In last week's episode, we were saying we haven't even seen the council from the point that he took lead control. We never saw them again in the series, and it felt like a dropped moment, I suppose, that could have played out in the series. But
I do hope that in the season 2 we get that is one that is played out, because you could have. Well, what I was hoping is the thread of Gaia and Falsworth setting up a potential like MI6 / Excalibur team. So you get then a Super Skrull, maybe a Captain Britain, something. Blade was on that team. Like, there was a lot on that very cool UK-centric team from the comic books. That could be a nice season 2, which is... Basically, look, the names of Skrull identities was leaked on the dark web, and now they're after XYZ, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. We need to kind of save the Skrull population, blah.
Absolutely.
Like, there's some... it was alluded to, again, Derek, you mentioned it, that Falsworth says, I'm going to use you, you're going to use me. That's how this relationship's going to work. So that sets up some interesting bits. And if not in this, at least hopefully... potentially something else, because I do like these characters. The setup of these characters was good. We learned a lot about some of their needs and wants, and just like, God, Olivia Colman, if this is her first and last,
it'd be such a waste.
Exactly. If it's first and last kind of appearance in the MCU,
it would be such a shame. Yeah, but that's the setup for season 2. You're totally right. That moment is saying, if we have a season 2, we have 2 of the best actresses in the world, the most well-known actresses in the world, with Olivia Colman and Emilia Clarke to lead a season of an MCU show called Secret Invasion. The show was never called Nick Fury's Secret Invasion, so it absolutely could just be a show with a second season, like Loki got a second season, even though that is named after him, so probably a bad comparison there, but you get what I mean. You could absolutely have a second season. This is perfectly set up to do that. Just not sure it's going to happen, unfortunately. And I feel that if it doesn't happen, they will drop that story. They probably won't continue with the story of of what's happening with the infiltrated Skrulls on Earth, and may just write it off with a treaty with the Kree, and the Skrulls leave in the background in a line of dialogue and go off and go back to their homeland or to somewhere else like that.
Final note from me, just very quickly, is we mentioned Hilda's no more. It was a send off. We will see her send off. It will be interesting to see if it is mentioned in the new Captain America film going forward, being that Captain America or the new Captain America and the new Falcon and Bucky have worked with her. That Hill is like Shield is no more, Hill is no more. Something just be interesting to see, because she was a central OG character to this show. She was there in Avengers, the very first Avengers. So it was a send off. So I just hope it is acknowledged in further. But yeah, Hill is no more. That hill is now been paved over for a motorway.
Okay.
And that's my notes.
Good stuff. So, John, do you defend Secret Invasion Episode 6 Home, the finale of Season 1, maybe, of Secret Invasion?
Yes, I do defend it just. I'd give it 3.5 shifting those shapes on the battlefield out of 5. I think...
okay.
Well, they were shifting their shapes with Gravik and Gaia. So, I mean, it's not that I didn't like it. I just feel like there's something missing on it all. I don't really think whether this actually, and it's from everything on the build up. I actually don't feel this has delivered. It felt short, this episode. A few of the others did as well. And maybe there was something that was cut, missing or whatever. But to me, the overarching impression I've got is I feel as though something has been left out, with the exception probably of Nick Fury and Priscilla/Vara's storyline, actually. That's where I feel there's a resolution here. I think throwing it open to a ton of humans in stasis right at the end, given it's been so focused on this nuclear plant, not even the talk of there being other networks around, and just... I think just it feels to me a little lack of cohesiveness, and it's simply, I think, because they were trying to sort of do sort of red herrings here, get misdirection there, and what have you. And that's fine for a big reveal, but I don't know whether the showdown between Gaia and Gravik ultimately needed to be that big showdown, of whether Nick Fury was a Skrull or not. I think that could have been done elsewhere, or if he was, well then the showdown is Nick Fury and Gravik, because he can survive the radiation. So I just feel like, they've not, it just feels unresolved a bit to me, other than with Nick Fury and Priscilla. But I loved Gravik and Nick Fury's sort of showdown. I did like it, but I just feel there's something missing. I can't quite put my finger on it, really. And I hope that they do manage to get a season 2, because I do think there are threads here that can be taken through. And I hope it goes into the more espionage, political, whether that is with the new Captain America, with Thunderbolts, whatever, that it leaks into that, because otherwise... I do feel there's a bit of a disservice to the overall Secret Invasion comic storyline, which was so epic. And I think maybe that's my biggest issue, is that with the title like that, with the antagonists who they are, I was thinking more epic, and it felt much more intimate. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's a great storyline. It's one that could really have fed into... with the more earthbound stuff. And maybe it will. And I really hope it does, to be honest. But yeah, I'd give it 3.5, shifting those shapes on the battlefield out of 5.
All right. Chris, how about yourself? Do you defend the finale of Secret Invasion?
I do defend it. I defend it and the series as a whole. Sure, there was... This was probably the weaker of the episodes for me out of the season. More just because, yeah, they fell into some of the tropes. To a CGI battle for 2 of the main characters, where you did have a spy master to some characters to kind of do. And I think a lot of it just culminated as well in my disappointment in some of the drop threads. Expecting resolution. So overall, I think the series sets up some really good points. It more just put Fury back on the board. Fury is the man he was before, if not better now, potentially, because he's now got his wife. His life he feels better. He averted disaster, and the man who was no longer 3 steps ahead is now back potentially 2 steps ahead. Maybe he just still has a bit more to grow and figure out, but like he's back as the Nick Fury everyone knows and love. So I do hope this kind of sets up more in the future. Who knows, if there wasn't strikes and stuff, maybe Marvel would have been at San Diego Comic-Con. Maybe we would have had more reveals this year. And maybe we weren't going to get that. But overall, I feel this episode itself kind of was slightly disappointing, but just because I think it set up some high expectations. And that's fine. It still individually was good. It just wasn't great, which I felt it could have been. So overall, yes, I do defend. But enough of what us naysayers have to say on Nick Fury. Nick Fury, number 1 superfan. Derek, do you defend this episode?
So you set that up like my opinion didn't matter because I was always going to defend this episode.
No,
this is Nick Fury on TV. It's 6 episodes show. Personally, this episode hit everything I expected it to with the way the show was set up from the beginning. We've talked about it being a smaller show. We've talked about as it going on, starting at the wide end of the wedge, talking about this world invasion and getting narrower and narrower to the point where it is Gaia and Nick Fury versus their enemies, Gravik and Rhodey, at the end of the season. It made total sense. It wrapped up the story really well. It did what we thought it was going to do, and that's not a criticism. I don't need to be surprised by every single TV show that I watch, and certainly a show with Nick Fury in there. If I'm surprised about how it's going to end, I probably haven't been reading Nick Fury for 40 years then. What I do think is different about this show, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. This show taking the title Secret Invasion is because it's a more recognizable comic book title, and that usually would encourage people to watch it that wouldn't watch it otherwise if it was called Nick Fury. This has much more in common with Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D., a comic book from 1989, one of my favorite comic books. A story where there's an infiltrator in there and Nick Fury is the only person that can take it down and has to find people he can trust to work with him to take down the infiltration effectively. That's the story that this feels much closer to. It also feels closer to the most recent Secret Invasion story that came out this year. It is not the epic global every single MCU character coming into the TV show, bringing back Chris Evans and all the other Chris's to play their MCU roles on screen for 10 seconds to be a Skrull. I don't think it was ever set up that way, but when they called it Secret Invasion 5 years ago, that may have been the expectation from people. So I can understand why people would be disappointed that we didn't get Thor reprising his role for 10 seconds in the finale, because they set themselves up episode by episode. People were setting themselves up to go, well, if it's not in this episode, then it's going to be a massive reveal. And now we're 3 episodes in and we haven't gotten anybody. So it's going to be an even bigger reveal. And now it's 5 episodes in. There has to be someone in the finale that we're not expecting. Well, I don't think the show promised that. I think people set their expectations quite high, expecting it to happen. I do think the story itself will hang very well together as a movie. Now that it is all out there, all 6 episodes can be watched back to back. I think it will hang quite well like that. I think the ending was really good. I'm saddened that it's probably not going to get a second season, mostly what I want for people that watch Nick Fury stories is for them to enjoy them and want more Nick Fury. And I don't think the show doesn't feel like it's accomplished that, unfortunately. So that's more where I'm disappointed. It's that it hasn't hit with people. But this does feel like a Nick Fury comic book story. I'm sorry. That probably won't make many people run out and buy Nick Fury comic book stories, but this is kind of what it feels like. He's going to win the battle at the end of the day, usually by his smarts. There will be a punch up. There's definitely going to be a punch up between two CGI characters in a show about Skrulls who are CGI characters. That's absolutely what was going to happen. So, it was reasonably predictable. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the payoff for it. And some fantastic acting throughout the season.
Yes.
Many great performances,
definitely.
so many great moments, so many brilliant characters. And it's so interesting to take what Samuel L. Jackson said in interviews at the beginning of the series, saying so many black actors are in the MCU and none of them have had time on screen together before. This show, if you look at all the characters who are in there, Gravik, Vara, Nick himself, Rhodey, all having really strong moments together on screen. That in itself was really well worth watching for me. I thought there were some of the best scenes we've seen, definitely in Marvel TV, some brilliantly acted, brilliantly written scenes. So really enjoyed those as well. Great stuff. That's it. That's our wrap up of Secret Invasion, episode 6 and the finale of that season. So just to reiterate, of course, I defend that episode, but
Good.
your mileage may vary, as they say. I think we need to go to the pub for a little cool-off drink. And our final question in our Secret Invasion pub quiz. John, do you want to give us question 6?
Yes, fellow quizzers, fellow defenders, it is the finale, which means we're on to question 6 of our Secret Invasion pub quiz. Here we go. It's a strange one to try and get a question from this
It really
episode.
was. There was
really
nobody
was.
drinking a bottle of whiskey. Like, you can't. There's no reference to what it is that Gravik is handing over to Gaia Nick to drink or anything like that.
Yeah, so I have to say, I think, even as I'll say this out loud, the question, I just think it's a really weird one, to be honest. What are the 2 hospital units at either end of the corridor where Nick Fury confronts Rhodey?
Yeah, that is a really weird question. I know the other option was what was the license plate on the car that Fury drives. And then it was like, well, Fury's not actually driving it. That car, it comes up without him inside. So how do you word the question? And then, there's a pole in the way, so you can't see the last digit. So at least you can see this.
Yeah, I mean, it was even like, oh, we could do the superpower one, but we have to talk about that. So it's,
Exactly.
do you know what I mean? So it's like the cool ones were already gone.
Yeah.
And it's like,
What's the final superpower that Gaia uses against Gravik?
you know,
Which one's
and
Captain
so
Marvel's superpower?
I apologize, fellow
That's all right.
defenders and quizzes, for probably the poorest pub quiz question
It's
ever.
not, John. There's been some terrible ones when you've had weeks off.
Yes.
Do you want to give the question one more time?
Yes, what are the 2 hospital units at either end of the corridor where Nick Fury confronts Rhodey?
Good stuff. That's the 6th and final question in our pub quiz. Put that together with the answers for all the rest of the questions. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you could be in with a chance of getting your hands on some Secret Invasion goodies, including the 5-issue digital comic book series Secret Invasion from this year as well.
Exactly. Good luck, fellow quizzers and defenders.
Absolutely. We'll be back in a few weeks to go through the pub quiz answers and provide a winner for the Secret Invasion pub quiz. But we're going to take our time a little bit because we've got lots of other podcasts to do.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Just a reminder, this episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including Cheryl Jones. Thanks so much, Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl.
Yes. Thank you from one Jones to another.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you want to be like Cheryl, you can support us on any monthly amount over on patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Or if you'd like to support for a one-off donation, you can pop on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI and buy us a coffee. It helps keep the lights and mics going. You can also support us by subscribing to the podcast, liking it, sharing it, and doing all the reviews over on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, any good or evil Shield or Skrull affiliated podcast catchers, because also when you do this, you're sharing the podcast with everyone, getting it visibility, and sharing the podcast is what, gentlemen?
Sharing the love.
Yes, sharing the COVID.
Well, hopefully not, John. Hopefully not. I'm getting out of this podcast room as soon as I can. But we need to pop on over to our feedback section to hear what our fellow defenders had to say about the final episode of Secret Invasion. First up from last week, Ray Felix said, there's a few hot plot holes in this whole series. One thing about the series I don't understand is at the end of Captain Marvel, Talos and his family left Earth in a spaceship with Carol Danvers to find a new home. The Skrulls effectively left planet Earth, so why return? In the theatrical version of the movie, Fury said he tied up my boss and assumed his identity. So where has Fury's boss been all this time? Is he still tied up? Why would Talos return to Earth and assume that identity for 30 years? I like the show, but there are some serious plot holes in the show. Also, did Carol Danvers end the Kree-Skrull War? Didn't she need the Tesseract to do that?
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, no, just on Maria Hill, that was Talos as Fury and his wife playing Hill. So the whole point, it wasn't them, it was just two Skrulls, just kind of portraying them.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, maybe this whole time that was it. I don't think so, because that wouldn't fully explain Talos saying he killed, or Gravik killed his wife when Hill was standing beside him earlier at that point. So it's just, it did. Yes, agree that that's what we did see, but no, Hill seemingly is dead now until we find out otherwise, because comic books.
Exactly. And I think we get it properly explained in this episode that the Skrulls came back because they couldn't find another home anywhere else, right?
Yes.
So they did come back. They tried to go off with Carol and then came back because they couldn't find anywhere else with her at the time. So, it's a shame, that we didn't get Carol Danvers in the show. She does have a lot to answer for not finding a home for the Skrulls. It could have been something as simple as they went out into space, they found more and more Skrulls, and instead of just traveling through space in a convoy, they said, we'll go back to Earth until Carol finds us somewhere. It could be something like that, but we haven't seen that. That's not in any of the movies that we've seen.
No, nothing yet.
As far as needing the Tesseract to take out the Kree, I don't think that was actually in the movie, because she chooses to leave the Tesseract behind with Fury. So it's not about her going and killing them all using the Tesseract. She's taking the Tesseract and putting it out of their hands so that they can't use it to rise up again. She has taken out their leader, the Great Intelligence, and she has taken out the people that were challenging her in Captain Marvel. But I don't think I don't think she was going back on a revenge mission to murder all the Kree using the Tesseract. I don't think that was the plan. Good stuff. Thanks, Ray. We also got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, greetings, fellow OP defenders. This episode was well acted with all right special effects. Pretty sure you called the Gaia Gravik fight. Nice fake out, contrived ending. How was Gaia so much more knowledgeable than him concerning the way too many powers and their usage? Also, the speech she made as Fury had more insight than she possibly could have possessed. The season made for a serviceable story. As a vehicle for Nick Fury, however, it was a nothing burger that I'm not sure why they made. The Skrulls are enough in the background that, if unmentioned, are easily forgotten. Nick's appearance in the Marvels doesn't require a series worth of backstory. The only things it did was kill Hill and Talos, give us a God mode Gaia, reunite Fury with his wife, and return the Skrulls to their endangered refugee status. As for a Kree-Skrull accord, better chance of Palestine and Israel getting together for a friendly barbecue. Director Fury deserved better than whatever this was, but still nice to see him no matter the reason. 3 target-pondering presidents, clashes of titans, and ebony and greenery in perfect harmonies out of 5. Peace and take care. Tough Coffee and Vodka.
Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Ebony and greenery is perhaps the best piece we've heard today. I agree partially. I think I'm a fair bit more positive overall on the Nothing Burger. I like my Nothing Burger with the cheese, and that's what we got. Overall,
wouldn't be a Nothing Burger then, Chris.
Yeah.
It'd be a cheeseburger.
Exactly. It's a cheese Nothing Burger.
There you go.
I think, look, reuniting Fury with his wife, returning the Skrulls, putting Gaia on the plate as a super Skrull, and unfortunately killing Hill and Talos. It did exactly what that's what we were supposed to get, and we got that. Yeah. Obviously there was potentially more in our heads of what we wanted, as Derek discussed. So I think overall it did what it wanted, it's set to do. Like, it kind of returned some chess pieces to the board while adding a few more and taking 2 off. And that we'll see where it goes with the MCU on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the TV shows are always supposed to work on their own, and I did think it gave you more knowledge of the characters that I felt I enjoyed watching them every week. So personally, even if they are characters that would be very minor in the MCU, the loss of Hill and Talos ended up being quite big because of the build that we got on those characters in this episode or in this season.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. And Felix as well. Over on Facebook, Heather Wallace says, so in the end, Secret Invasion was a Nick Fury love story. I didn't expect that. I also didn't expect the episode to be so short. Sonya has been outstanding, and I'm so impressed with her approach to Gaia. No love and friendship. Let's just get on with things. Mad respect. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Heather. I think the love story of Nick Fury with Vara / Priscilla, I think, you know, it really did play out over the course of this in a satisfactory way. I'm totally with you. Sonya, outstanding. She better be back in the MCU. It better be connected, because it's a real waste of an introduction to what turned out to be, you know, along with Samuel L. Jackson, one of the best performances of the series, especially given the amount of screen time she had.
Absolutely. I'd love to see Olivia Colman's Sonya going up against Val and her Thunderbolts.
That would be an awesome match-off, actually.
Yeah, just Sonya and Gaia taking on all of the Thunderbolts, basically. kind of cool. Thanks, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. We also got some feedback from Donald Dennis, who has this to say. In all, that was a pretty strong episode. I don't feel it patched up any of the weaknesses of the rest of the series. It didn't have a super spy thriller ending, and the one big twist was very predictable. The Skrulls using their superpower was fun, but not amazing, and the CGI was not spectacular. I don't understand how the DNA gave them access to all those powers. Was Ebony Maw's telekinetic power sorcery or something he can do because of his DNA? Is the Tesseract power part of the DNA? Will Gaia be part of the entangled Miss Marvel's character swapping in the Marvels? One vote for yes here. Mm-hmm. When Fury arrived at the Skrull compound, I really thought it was Gaia instead of him, but the way he communicated had me doubting that. Normally when listening to your podcast and Chris goes, I wanted more X, I think there just wasn't enough room. In this case though, I really feel like the overall story would have been better if we had a flashback episode showing the connection Gaia and Gravik had made with the world, the Skrulls, and each other. But then the ending with the moment when Gravik lost hope in Fury. To sum up my thoughts, the series had some neat bits, but it was not one I'd necessarily revisit with any regularity. Thanks, Donald. Yeah, look, Chris going, I want more X, and everyone going, not enough room. That's a conversation we have a lot on our podcast.
Yes, it is. I have to edit it out quite a lot as well.
Yes, exactly, because it's been said a lot.
Yeah. But you're totally right. I know I mentioned this on episode 5. From the other perspective, the idea that we haven't had that relationship between Gravik and Gaia. I think it was episode 4 where Gaia got killed. I was saying, wouldn't it have been great to have that idea? These two have spent 30 years on the planet together. They must have some relationship to flash back to, some idea of the story of the two of them growing up together and why Gaia went one way and he went the other, and then they came back together. That's a story that's worth telling in this series. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Donald. That would have been a great addition to the story.
Yeah, definitely.
I do question, based on the shortness of these episodes, whether there was an additional storyline that was cut and we've just been edited out. Mm-hmm. Maybe around Gaia and Gravik and something else that just they cut for time or cut for X reason.
Yeah. It just would have underlined that final battle even more. You know, the fact that Gravik was willing to kill both of her parents. One we hear about in dialogue off screen, and the other one we know really well. But if we'd known that the two of them had been really close as kids, broken apart, and then he murdered her parents, like if we'd seen that story on screen somehow, I think that would have been a great addition to the show. Yeah, good
it
call.
would have been. And oh my god, I just thought about this. We did not get an end credit scene.
No post-credit scene, no.
No post-credit scenes in this series.
No.
Whatsoever. I went back twice to check, maybe because I thought maybe Disney had done just skip over and it jumped because of whatever reason on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
No, I was like, wow, that's an interesting piece.
Excellent stuff. Thanks so much, Donald. Dr. Bob Phillips says, we got a super scroll off. I am slow, though. It was only after the discussion about the face that I twigged it was Gaia, not Fury, wearing the Fury skin. This, like the helicopter attack, was near movie-level magic. Really enjoyed the Entente Cordiale being the summit of the uncloaking with top-quality Olivia when we needed her. Did I expect the roadie in the rack to have been there so long? No. Thought that was pushing it, but it does open up so many alternative history arcs. And then the finale, Var and Fury sitting in a tree making peace with the krill we see. And was the massive artwork behind Priscilla towards the end of Chromosomes? Thanks, Dr. Bob. We actually went back and had a look at the scene with Priscilla, or all the scenes actually with Priscilla in the episode. Not too sure where the massive artwork was, because when it was in her house, she was in effectively her greenhouse, very elaborate looking greenhouse, but in her greenhouse putting it back together after the big battle from the last episode. And then at the end, when she's with Fury, it's just a big white wall. I didn't see any chromosomes behind.
Yeah, no, I couldn't spot any. But I think it maybe hints towards her work being done, possibly.
Yeah, potentially.
As I say, certainly given the pink ear, which sounds like maybe she's
like pink eye.
Yeah, she's been stung or something, and it's inflamed.
Yeah.
But I think, I couldn't quite see that. And I think, that moment where Fury kind of goes green, you're like going, oh, okay. And then it's like, oh, it is Gaia. Because like they do have to reduce her height as well.
Yes. So look away for a second.
Has changed the look.
Yeah. Look away for a second. Look back for a second. Yeah. Good stuff. I'm glad you enjoyed the battle though. Very cool, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob. Cale Hensley says, I felt that the best part of the episode was the scene between Fury and Gravik, so it's a little disappointing that it was Gaia. I think Fury Gravik thing was really well done. Again, whether it's whether it's the flashback that has been mentioned there by Donald, or just some general hitting home of some of the context. We were told that they do take on the memories and stuff, and for the longer they're inhabiting that person, and with the stasis technology that they can extract their memories. But I mean, Fury isn't in stasis here, so like I guess she just knows it as well, possibly. But it's a bit more around that, just sort of layering sort of the whole series, I think, would have really benefited it.
I do contest that the reason why that scene was so great was really because of Kingsley Benadir. We know Samuel L. Jackson's a great actor, but I think he was giving everything to Kingsley Benadir in that scene and just facilitating it a bit. So I think the scene is fantastic. You're totally right, Cal. But for me, it's Kingsley that makes it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. Thanks, Cale. We also got some feedback from Doug Green, who said, I'm sorry, Derek, but this was probably my least favourite Marvel series to date, and found the finale to be underwhelming at best. What should have been a series where you're wondering if that person is really who they say they are, the lines were clearly drawn, and the only person who seemed uninformed was the president?
Sounds right.
I was disappointed in how Talos and Maria Hill went out. Overall, it just wasn't for me. Thanks, Doug. Look, and again, that's what the MCU is now becoming. Not every show and not every film is going to be for everyone. And potentially you got some bits out of it, and you can be like all of us, where we watch all of them, and some are going to be high on the kind of rankings, some are going to be low, some are going to be middling, and that's okay. Like, I'd much rather live in a world where we're swimming in 7s and 6s and 8s and then 10s every now and again than never having a show like this at all. Yeah,
really sorry to hear that, Doug, that you didn't enjoy the series. Because I know these types of shows in general would be stuff that you'd like. So that's a bit of a shame. We also got some feedback from Victor Von Doom, who says, "Greetings, Defenders. I thought the finale was just setting up a great continuing theme. Will this be the beginning of the slow march into Dark Reign? The Sonya Fury team up in the episode was great. A real world Rear Admiral would have pimp slapped Scrody after his stupid pill comment. Scrody had too much power as National Security Chief. Vara overstepped several White House positions to even write a speech for the president. I did not expect Ritzen's reaction to the Skrulls. I guess he did not care or understand the Skrull saves him. He will be an easy target for Thunderbolt Ross to take down and replace. Gravik's hatred blinds him to Gaia's ploy. Fury must have briefed Gaia on the powers in the Harvest because she sure took advantage. Does the result of the battle leave Gaia the only Super Skrull? Looking forward to Gaia and Sonya teaming up. I liked Sonya's honesty in her offer to Gaia as well. I was hoping Carol Danvers would show up, but I realised the series leads into the Marvel's film. Danvers should still take some heat for failing the Skrull refugees. I was surprised at how long Rhodey has been replaced. He will have a lot to catch up on, including Stark's death. What was Abomination's DNA doing in the Harvest? He wasn't present at the endgame battle. I feel like there are a lot of missed plot opportunities, but still enjoyed the series as a catalyst for what's to come. Looking forward to TVPI podcast and Defenders feedback. Excelsior, Victor Von Doom. Thanks, Victor. Seems you're hitting a few other points that we had on the episode as well. But yeah, some great moments there with Sonya and Gaia teaming up. I think, yeah, Gaia is now the Super Skrull. She's the only one. It seems like Gravik was holding back on giving his lieutenants any type of superpowers until he had the Harvest. And that didn't happen, right? So that's the one thing we didn't even get explained. We were talking about the fact that he obviously killed more Skrulls at New Skrullos than in the battle last week, and then said the rest of them were locked away. But where they're locked away, or are those Skrulls actually out in the world as well? So it might be the case. Yeah.
How many? Again, we know it was over 1 million. So
yeah.
Are we down to 800,000? Or are we down to 999,000?
See, it seemed like his group was small.
Yes.
It did seem like his group was like under 100. So, and we know those bodies that Sonya was looking at, those are the other Skrulls. Those are not Gravik's people. Those are other Skrulls that have taken human form. So yeah, that's the other cells potentially of the other Skrulls.
Yeah.
Are they the new Hydra? You cut off one head and another grows in its place.
Exactly.
It's one cell for another cell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Victor. Joe Herbers says, disappointing end to a disappointing series. I figured it was a Skrull pretending to be Fury at the nuclear site. Why else would he be acting so clearly affected by the radiation, dropping his pills and all that? But why in the hell would he actually bring the Harvest? That made no sense, even compared to the rest of the nonsense. I can't headcanon any reason for that. Presumably its purpose was to set up a Super Skrull fight, but that was dull CGI with an obvious outcome. What's funny is that the last episode of The She-Hulk made fun of this very thing. Olivia Colman was fun as usual, but she definitely should have just shot Scrody. She did it to her Skrull boss in the last episode. I said to my wife, just shoot him already, even in the leg to reveal he's a Skrull. So dumb. And that scene went on and on. During the confrontation, why did Gravik ask what Fury wanted in exchange for the Harvest? He had brought it to him and seemingly couldn't cope to stop Gravik from taking it. Gravik already told Fury he was going to kill him. Looking back, the exchange between them makes little sense if it's not actually Fury. Thanks, Joe. Again, it's one of those things really, sorry that, you didn't really enjoy this series, and in particular the final ending. And I think, I think there's a lot maybe where possibly there's a bit of wrapping up in knots for some of this series.
Yeah.
Possibly, because certainly for me, the Gravik Fury scene I thought was really, really good, but then, I can see that your perspective also makes sense. And I think, as to why, if it's just setting up a Super Skrull fight. And I think,
there is an explanation for it. I don't know whether Joe will accept it. But the explanation for it is that the only piece of DNA that, Gaia has inside her is the extremis, which we've seen her use to heal herself. So she only has healing abilities. Nobody else can beat Gravik because we know he definitely has the Groot abilities in there and the healing abilities in there. So what she's trying to do is goad him into using the Harvest to give her the powers to beat him back. That's why she's there. That's why she's driving it. Yeah, absolutely. If you didn't enjoy the episode, totally understand. The way you've written it there as it's just to write a dull CGI fight. it's not. It's so that she has the power to take out Gravik. But it could have been explained better. We could have had a moment where Nick's giving her the guidance on what powers she's going to get when it kicks off, so that she is trained to use the powers. That absolutely could be something that could have been in the show. Totally get that.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Next piece of feedback comes from David Mr. Ryder, who said, Derek, do you defend this episode? So, the good. That scene between Gravik and Fury, Gravik stole the spotlight. His acting was superb. Another bad you kind of wished lived because his acting was so good. Like the nod to Rhodey being back to being paralysed, nice little detail. Sonya, as always, a great icing on the cake. Marvel really spent $200 million plus for these sitcom episode lengths. Okay, so I didn't hate it at all, but I wasn't really blown away. Skull Rhodey got annoying quick. The Skrull mega fight was cool, but also underwhelming. Minus the sky fight scene, which reminded me of a Dragon Ball Z fight.
Nice.
Very much so, actually, yes, I thought that too. The kill shot was cliche. Someone mentions your loved one and you get extra powers to kill them. Yawn. But being a super casual fan, not knowing the comics, I'm not mad at the series. I actually enjoyed it, but the finale was a bit lukewarm. I'm intrigued in what it sets up with other shows or movies, but maybe another 15 minutes would have tied it up nicely. 2.5 regenerative arms out of 5 finale, 4 eye patches out of 5 for the series. Also, no post-credit scene. What the hell, Marvel? Thanks, David. Yeah, look, I agree on the post-credit. I just mentioned it there a few minutes ago. What the hell? Like, that really did. Mm-hmm. Agree, 15 minutes could have tied it up more. And I think you're very much right. Gravik, in that scene, Kingsley Ben-Adir just really stole the show.
Absolutely.
And the good thing is, he had extremis. He may not be dead. Like, they can easily kind of say, yeah, it took him a year of his kind of extremis working in the background, but he rejuvenated and he's back, and now that's how you bring him back in.
See, I think they might just have him come back as a character to convince some of his former supporters to come back, or we may just see Gaia pretending to be him next season. Something like that. I think that shot through the heart with Captain Marvel's powers is probably the death of him. Yeah. Unfortunately, because yes, you're right, he is absolutely fantastic. Really, really enjoyed him. Thanks, David. Dan Lee says, I love the fact they did the exact style of finale that She-Hulk made fun of several months ago. This whole series is a bit of a shoulder shrug for me, but I'm interested to see how this now spreads into the further Marvel projects. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm not sure whether it will spread into further Marvel projects. If it had been massive success and everybody was on board with it, I'd say we would get a season 2, which is where these threads will be picked up. But at the moment, I think it won't be until the next Earth-bound movie or TV show takes place that we'll see it.
Yeah. Probably even not the next Earthbound, because the next one Earthbound is Echo, which won't mention this. So potentially Daredevil, Born Again, season 1 or season 2 of that, or part 1 part 2 of that. Which we know is still being filmed, but that's now on hiatus due to the strike. So maybe in that or a bit later.
Yeah, and I think the point again, it's taking them back to the place where they're being hunted. There's a million of them on Earth. They hid before, they can hide again, effectively. So they just may never mention them again unless we see Sonya back hunting Skrulls, trying to find Skrulls, trying to kill the bad ones, save the good ones. You know, that's the possibility that we'll see them again. Great stuff. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Harvey Locus had this to say: if you asked me to describe the show with one word, it would be empty. Empty promises, empty threats, empty of heroes, empty emotions. The final fight was okay, but it could have been so much better if it weren't for just copying each other most of the time. I guess Gaia has seen more of the movies because she knew how to pull a Mantis. Yes, having Mantis's power was a good one. I think she may have just been told by you could easily say that Fury told her more of the powers. Use this one, do this, because he knew all the powers. But I don't agree with the empty. But again, happy for you to have that opinion. And as we move into the next series, hopefully that one's for you, or the next movie, that one's for you.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Harry. Salima Kisler says, I wish we knew more about Ritson and what would have led him to make that speech, seemingly ignoring anything Fury or Sonya would have told him. He seemed like a reasonable guy from what little we saw of him. Anyone born off-world is a list that now includes Thor, which seems off in a world that reveres and loves the Avengers. This president has an Avenger as his main advisor, at least as far as he knew. This, along with Gravik flipping from revolutionary leader to iron-fisted dictator last episode, were a bit too abrupt for me. The hospital scene between Fury, Sonya, Ritson and Rhodey didn't work for me either. We just saw Sonya prove someone is a Skrull beyond any doubt with a non-fatal gunshot. Why not do the same here with Skrull Rhodey? I'm still interested to know how long Rhodey and Ross were being impersonated. They went right up to the edge of telling us, but stopped right there. At the end, Fury is still operating in the background. Is Secret War next? Interesting. I'd love to see Secret War, but I'd love to see Nick Fury's Secret War, which is my favourite version of that, where Nick controls loads of superheroes without them knowing that they're being controlled by Nick Fury. It's one of my favourite stories. Well worth a read. But again, I don't think we're going to have another massive MCU spanning movie until we get back to the Avengers in Kang. The Kang movie's coming up, right?
Yeah,
that's the next time we're going to have a big
Wars.
Avengers movies. That's one of those, Secret War. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. It's a different Secret War.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks, Salim.
Yeah, thanks, Salim.
Great stuff. Thanks everybody for joining us for this season of Secret Invasion. Hopefully we do get a second season of Secret Invasion. I'll be here watching it and waiting for it as well. We have got loads of other stuff that we'll be covering on TV Podcast Industries. Just make sure you subscribe at tvpodcastindustries.com so you can get access to all of the stuff that we're covering. We're kicking off our coverage of Good Omens Season 2 really soon. It's coming out on Prime Video this week. We're also concluding our coverage of The Witcher Season 3 very soon, the final season with Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia. Mm-hmm. All episodes of that season now available. And we'll be back in the MCU for Loki Season 2 coming up in October. The Marvels are released in November 10th, 2023. And as it stands right now, Armor Wars the movie starring Don Cheadle, where he will return as James Rhodes, is slated for release on July 25th, 2025.
Wow.
So some wide-ranging ramifications from the end of Secret Invasion, even if there isn't a Secret Invasion 2 coming up.
Yes.
And we have
indeed.
D23 later this year, so let's wait and see how this is discussed and if it is discussed.
Yeah, all they need to do is just pay their writers and actors to do the jobs that they've been doing for almost nothing for the last couple of years, and maybe we could get some announcements about future projects. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Hopefully.
Would be good.
Good stuff.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I can't wait to chat more Marvel with you in the future. But until that point, make sure you subscribe to our feeds and everything at tvpodcastindustries.com.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Final reminder, you can also pop over there to tvpodcastindustries.com and find all the questions for the pub quiz. We want to get you entering for that. That'll be the next time we come back talking about Secret Invasion. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, fellow defenders. Keep watching, keep listening, and be careful who you trust.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.